Oh, wait, I'm not. Oh, wait. Let me put on. Oh, motherfucker, I gotta put on the right. Oh, wait, I'm not. Oh, wait. Let me put on. Oh, motherfucker, I gotta put on the right. What's up, JM? Hold on, let me fix my led bat. So I may be struggling today. I may be struggling a little today. Okay. Oh, wait, I missed your comment. Hold on. What you said? In the words of a wise philosopher, gang in this bitch. Yeah. 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 All right. Let's start the live. Let's start the live. Okay, live video. Let's go. And I didn't make a dinner reservation. We'll just go eat at the bar. I'm sure it'll be okay.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. All right. What's up? How we doing today? How's everybody doing? Let me know you're ready. I always wait for people to say go. Ahem. Stop. Okay. That means we're ready. 1 second. I'm just trying to make sure the live is good on Substack because it's doing weird shit. Because why? Because I have Chrome as a browser. Something fucking weird's happening. Oh, there we are. Okay, we're good. What's up? What's up? Okay, we are on page 97. We're going to read about managerialism. Okay, a contemporary of Friedman was Elmer E. Schachtschneider, who once famously, that's a real name, Schachtschneider, once famously wrote that the flaw in the pluralist heaven is that the heavenly chorus sings with a strong upper-class accent. Oh. Oh. Okay. Noted. To understand the significance of this phrase today and the relevance of class for analyzing the organizational bias of idiotism, class analysis needs to be rethought in relation to idiotism as a globalizing condition. Okay, class needs to be rethought in relation to idiotism as a globalizing condition. So class analysis is a globalizing condition. Let's keep that in mind. I'm not sure exactly where he's going with this. This potentially means two countervailing things. First, it's important to think of class formations beyond borders of particular nations. Aye, Captain. Idiotism is driven by a transnational capitalist, what is the word, TCC? Transnational capitalist class. Yes. Okay. Does anybody disagree with this? Does anybody think, when you think of the rich, are you thinking of the rich in the US, or are you thinking of the rich globally? When I think of the rich, I think globally, which expands the upper class. Because if you go to givingwhatwecan.org, you can see where you fall in the global scheme of things. I think it's like if you make more than $50,000 a year, you're in like the top 10% globally. So that's different than what we think of in terms of the US. In terms of the US, like there's a lot of people in the United States that are like, oh, I'm not rich. I'm just comfortable. But no, they rich globally. Transnational, but we're in the West, so our rich is very transnational. Yeah, and that's the other thing. Is like, if you think about besides the West, are they thinking transnationally? The rich, we have a tendency to think more transnationally than those who are not in the West. The rich are definitely borderless in most ways. Yes, agreed, Rick. Hi, Ahmed. The global rich market shifts to crush entire economies. Hi, Angel. I see you. So, entirely counter to the idealism of the free marketeers, an analysis of the transnational capitalist class shows how the extension of the economic realm in the form of deregulation, privatization, and financialization absolutely requires social and political intervention in the form of direct action on the part of politicians, civil servants, managers, amongst others, who, in addition to capitalists, provide the necessary condition for the free flow of capital. Secondly, okay, so basically, it's not just the free market. So the free marketeers want to believe it's just the capitalists at work. No, it's a coordinated effort. Well, the rich 1.0 for Nigeria aren't rich, but the rich 2.0 are rich. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, but Nigeria is like one small place again. But Nigeria is an interesting case because of where it's situated in Africa. That and South Africa. South Africa's, I mean, yeah, they're both very interesting cases for that. Secondly, this with the global management, yeah, would like Lagos be considered part of the West at this point? That's an interesting question I hadn't thought about before. Comments on that. Secondly, with this global management system of a system demanding the participation of a number of differing social actors from a range of institutions and social sectors, thereby possibly making the category of social or economic class too fuzzy to be useful, it's also necessary to ask whether or not with the rise of managerialism, a form of social organization has emerged that has superseded both socialism and capitalism, and that we might therefore have to abandon a class analysis altogether. This is like beyond the petite bourgeoisie. So the managerial class, the PMC, is this part ownership class. Yeah, and I think he's right about this, and I've thought about this too. Freddie DeBoer talks about this. There's a couple people that talk about this. No, it's a major node in global capital, though. Yes, totally. Such a position is set out in Willard F. Entenmann's Managerialism, The Emergence of a New Ideology. In this book, Entenmann contends that managerialism is not only taken over from capitalism and socialism, but actually replaced democracy as well. It's therefore quite a radical theory of depoliticization. He can offer this argument primarily because of the way... Oh no. Chrome is going to relaunch in 6 minutes? What the fuck? Hold on, guys. That's going to be a big problem. In 6 minutes, we're going to have a huge problem. Motherfuckers. Why? Not to derail the conversation. Oh, don't worry. Substack just did it. But don't feel like Western countries are free market economies. You don't feel like Western countries are free market economies. Interesting. Okay, first of all, I just saw Ellie Anderson holding up you in your profile. Interesting. Copycat. Okay, second of all, I am going to sign out. I'm sorry, I'm going to stop the Substack live and I'm going to restart it because something weird's going to happen if I don't. Apologies for the interruption. Do you think it's going to restart my whole computer? Is that going to be a thing that happens? I'm getting so mad. Why is it always some bullshit? Why is it always some fucking bullshit? You know what? Fuck it. I'll just upload this to Substack. Okay, whatever happens, happens. I know it's going to happen, but I'll just upload this one. Sorry, guys. Hold on. Let's see. I feel like skip to Vivaldi. I feel like open market economies at best. We have governing bodies deciding the costs of capital. Do we? I mean, I don't think it's not, I wouldn't call it an entirely free market, no, but it's pretty free, Rick. I would struggle to argue, I would struggle to like find ways in which companies don't get the prices that they want. Define free, they could be more freer, sure, but they could be a lot more controlled reasonably or not. Like, I don't know, the state should own, I don't care, the state should own the trains and the water. Oh, shit, at least partially. Always some fucking problem in my life. That's not a free market. 100% the Federal Reserve meets once a month to decide the cost of capital. What do you mean the cost of capital? I'm not sure what you mean by that. Like, it's not 100% owned. And don't forget, all of the politicians involved in this process are bought and paid for. So, like, I don't know how you could say that it's entirely it's owned. It's not. Hi, Antonia. Okay, so let's go back to this. Okay, so managerialism is a radical theory of depoliticization. He can offer this argument primarily because of the way he respectively defines these three modes of social organization in terms of atomism, organicism, and process. While the first two are perhaps obvious, capitalism is atomistic because it assumes the individual consumer as its basic unit, while socialism is organic for its commitment to a totality that supposedly transcends individuals. Democracy is defined in terms of process because Entenmann views it primarily as a means for resolving disputes and conflicts that emerge among citizens. While there are problems with these definitions, not least because the market can be seen to be a process for resolving disputes, they do permit Entenmann to differentiate managerialism from them. He writes, "The managerialist society is not one which responds to the needs, desires, and wishes of its majority of its citizens. In the managerialist society, influence is exercised through organizations. The society responds to whatever the managements of various organizations can gain in their transactions with each other. Managerialism for Entenmann is thus the sublation of atomism, organicism, and process. It incorporates individuals, but only as they are represented by managerial units. Such units can be organic wholes with which members might strongly identify, but the system operates through these interactions and decision-making of the managers of these social units. For Entenmann, this means that society is nothing more than the summation of the decisions and transactions which have been made by the managements of the organizations. It's a lethal challenge to democracy," he argues, not only because it is not individuals making decisions, but also because without management you cannot participate in transactions. This is then compounded by Entenmann's contention that the management of each unit primarily seeks to secure the best deal for itself in the first instance and only secondly for its members. Managerialism thus becomes a self-reproducing system in which management is always at an advantage. Okay, my biggest issue with this managerialist concept is initially, I struggle to see how there's not individualism at play. Like, how is the individual consumer managed? Now, I suppose you could say that we're ushered by algorithms largely at this point. We're ushered by what's available at the grocery store. We're ushered by these kinds of systems of management. But it's like you also have many managers. So you as an individual have many people ushering you or managing you. So it could be so. This is an interesting framing, though. Let me read some comments. They decide interest rates once a month. Yeah, okay, interest rates are not everything. So Rick, what you're saying, and that's what I thought you were getting at. So yes, the Fed decides interest rates once a month. That is not the entire economy. That is not the price of commodities. That is not the price of goods. That's the price of debt. So setting the interest rates is a big deal, but it is not everything. So to say that this is a planned economy or it's not a free market is crazy. But what you're talking about is debt. That's just them trying not to crash the unicycle. Yeah, they've already got their fingers in the pie in so many places they have to. In a free market, the unicycle would not crash whenever the market decides, not the Fed. Well, that's how you know it's not entirely free. So, because there would be no Fed. There would be no Fed to crash the market if the market was completely free. So nobody's saying it's an entirely free market. What I'm saying is it's more free than not free. And also the fact that companies can buy what they want and puppeteer the Fed in a way is big. So if the companies want shit to crash, it will crash. If the companies want the market to crash, it will crash. And if you think it doesn't, you're tripping, because the market has like planned crashes. It's like checking your radiators, not exactly the cost of capital. Yeah, I agree. It 100% drives the cost of good. Not 100. Now you're getting a little crazy saying that 100% drives the cost of goods. No, it does not 100% drive the cost of goods. Rick, I think the problem here is you're totalizing a lot. You're not seeing any shades of gray. You're just going, yeah, this is it 100%. And I think if you look at it for a second, I think you'll agree it's not 100% true. Oh, you're not derailing the conversation at all. You're totally fine. This is what we're here for. I think we're here to have this conversation because you could read a book on your own if you wanted to. We're here to have the discussion. We're here, and I'm glad you're putting your comments out because other people can see them and think about them as well. It's not just, this isn't just for me and you, you know? What's up, Jared? Innovation only happens during bubbles. That's not true. Come on, Jared. I didn't mean 100% in it as in it's the sole driver, but definitely a big driving factor. There you go, Rick. There you go, Rick. Okay, everybody give it up for Rick. All right, cool. So, atomization, organicism, and process. So the managers. While Entenmann's book is very good in many ways, not least because it's one of the few that tries to get the radical nature of what's been happening for 30 years, but there are a number of problems with it. He argues that managerialism is a name for deep social change, not a name for attitudinal shifts. And in this, I would have to agree. The shift to a global free market and the forms of micro and macro governance that have emerged with it are not superficial phenomena. And while the production and reproduction of managerialism clearly demands an engagement with the system theories of Niklas Luhmann and Emanuel Wallerstein, my own treatment of which I will need to reserve for further work. The problem with Entenmann's approach lies predominantly in his definition of the systems that managerialism has supposedly supplanted. That managerialism has superseded socialism is to some degree plausible given the sorry state that socialism finds itself in, but that does not mean that socialism is irrelevant. In fact, quite the contrary is the case. Socialism only appears irrelevant because of the complexity of social systems, constantly denigrated or ignored in favor of the usual caricature of socialism as totalitarianism. In this way, Entenmann sticks with the definition most readily deployed by capitalists. Socialism equates to the transcendence and negation of the individual and the particular on the journey to some higher good, which always turns out to be evil. With regard to democracy, there can be little doubt that this has also been superseded, as is demonstrated by the power of the new aristocracy or the financial oligarchy. But again, Entenmann works with very established conceptions of a supposedly liberal demos that, while dominant in political science, cannot be said to exhaust the term. But the biggest problem lies with his definition of capitalism as atomistic. Such a definition permits him to argue that social organization via individuals has now been replaced by social organization via managerial units, but in so doing he uses a conception of social organization that he argues is no longer valid. In other words, to say that we have moved beyond capitalism, he uses a definition of it that's completely inadequate to understand how it works. Capitalism has never and will never run as an aggregation of individual choices. This is rather its central fantasy. Capitalism, and what I am calling idiotism, posits the individual and the personal consumer choice as the founding units of organization, but all the while it operates through units of social influence, or in the language of Chapter 1, referential totalities of specific worlds. So my argument was that how he's saying that it doesn't run off the individual, and his argument is it never has. Now, I think the thing is what we're talking past each other, but we're coming to the same conclusion, which is that the managerialist argument is not total, because the market wants to push something to individuals that they may or may not pick up, regardless of their management, right? We're working based on desires and needs, but the system is not actually pushing desires and needs. It's pushing what it wants to push. Capitalism, and what I'm calling idiotism, posits the individual and personal consumer choice as the founding unit of social organization, but all the while it operates through units of social influence. As discussed previously, there is absolutely no such thing as a purely individual choice or a purely innate desire, and even the most radical projections of future goals emerge out of a world that frames those decisions. Despite capitalism's claims to the privileging of individuality, it is not immune to facticity and social influence of ideology, or what Heidegger calls Das Man, the largely anonymous tastes and preferences of wider groupings. Interesting. I don't know why he's got this beef with it. That it's like, oh, you're not actually targeting the individual, you're targeting the individual's like psyche, which is influenced by lots of other things in people. Capitalism, nevertheless, consistently disavows the fact that it is complex, but the very ideological system aiming at the collective reproduction of desire as much as the production of goods. But very large, that is a complex but very large. Okay. What managerialism offers us then, especially as it is set out by Entenmann, is a way of describing not the surpassing of capitalism, but the very mechanism by which the contemporary form of capitalism, or idiotism, both extends itself beyond the economic realm and broadens its social reach. Social choice, he writes, arises out of group managerial transactions. Effectively, there is no linkage between social choice and individual preferences. At the same time, there's no identifiable or overarching social personality. Managerialism, as both a descriptive and explanatory model, is attractive, therefore, not only because it displaces the central myth of idiotism regarding the primacy of individual preference, replacing it with the reality of managerial transactions, but because it offers a means for thinking how idiotism, as a fundamentally economic dogma, might be able to extend itself across every aspect of social life. I don't know how I really feel about the managerialist argument and him trying to say it has something to do with idiotism. I feel like he's reaching here. I don't know what you guys are thinking. Oh, you put the Sowell article? Yes. Oh gosh, I wish I had time to read it today, Jared. I should read it. But I don't have Discord. I don't have Discord on my computer at this computer, so I can't pull it up right now. I would read it though, right now, rather than reading this. Targeting Das Man is targeting the part of you that everybody shares. He's concretizing, but yeah, okay, so you agree. Because it's subject to Freudian programming, advertising, but that just might be me. Yeah. I don't know what he's trying to do here. I don't know what his point is. I feel this way about a lot of the book. I feel like there's like a big so what to me with a lot of this shit. Like, okay, so what? Why are you trying to mix idiotism and managerialism? Because idiotism is about the enclosing of everything in private, behind private paywalls, basically. And managerialism is like then saying, okay, only you get access to this thing. Like you can't even get in the club. How are you going to hate from outside the club thing? Your manager won't even let you in the club. So it's like, to me, that's, okay, the only thing I could see him doing here, and I don't know if this is what he's doing, but it's just my guess, he's saying there's like a double wall. There's like two walls encircling shit in some cases. There's the primary wall, then there's the managerialist wall. So it's like not only you can't even have the money to get in, but then once you have, it's like these elitist clubs. Even if you have the money to get in the club, you are not socially allowed to get in the club. It's conflicting. He's not decisive, only critical, but to what end? Yeah, that's Ken's argument too, is it's like, he's like, and what? With regard to the latter, it's necessary to challenge, the extension of idiotism and managerialism across every aspect of social life. With regard to that, it's necessary to challenge Entenmann's claim that there is no overarching personality that might be said to guide or shape the transaction amongst units, thereby bringing it in line with the argument that the system that managerialism manages is one that is driven by the interests of the transnationalist class. See, that's what I was going to say. When I'm reading the first half of that sentence, I'm like, there's no one overarching personality. Yeah, it is. Money. Money. In the words of Cardi B, money. The economic battle of Elysia. Build a wall around our wall. To be sure, there is no god, monarch, or dictator, no person who determines our choices, nor is there an essential human nature that drives social choice, but there is no need to establish some kind of sovereign personality to be able to argue that choice is motivated by forces beyond the specific dynamics that determine relations between social units. Yeah. In the opening chapter, it's already been shown how the impersonality of Das Man becomes the measure of the everyday activities, choices, and decisions that absorb us. The meaningfulness of our world is not a subject, but it still directs our every move. So to be able to use Entenmann's insights to account for the rise and spread of idiotism, it's necessary to explain how transactions are shaped not just by the specific concerns and interests at play in the interactions between units, but how transactions become entrained towards the advancement of a very specific social organization known as the free market. As Schatzschneider also reminded us, there is no such thing as neutral organization, because organization is the mobilization of bias. Ooh, man, that Schatzschneider really be having some bars. Thank you, Corey. Appreciate you. What kind of word is that, Jared? Vercingetorix? What the fuck? Entenmann's critique of atomism, coupled with his rejection of any overarching social determinant, permits him to rather absurdly declare that capitalist assumptions are irrelevant to the advanced industrial societies of the late 20th century. In speaking, yeah, I agree with him on this managerialism thing. Managerialism may be like more of a metaphysical program. Like it may be a cloak. I feel like it's something that is happening, but I don't feel like there's something wrong about his definition. In speaking of the irrelevance of capitalism, he is not only assuming capitalism to be atomistic, but also accepting other nonsensical premises from positive economics that the economy is deterministic, or the capitalist system is determined by purely economic rather than social or psychological factors. Yeah, this is getting at the whole animal forces thing again, like missing the element of animal forces. Because Entenmann perceives a capacity for effective discretion in the current system, and positive economics to some degree excludes discretion, he claims further grounds for the supersession of capitalism at this point. But with capitalism gone, he has very little means left to account for how power operates around this capacity for discretion or decision-making, and thereby to explain its bias. Accounts of capitalism need not assume some overarching personality for capitalism's continuation. In his excellent study of global capital, William I. Robinson argues for what he calls a recursive effect that benefits a particular dominant class, but that the structures of the global economy come about as the unplanned outcome of strategic decisions taken by thousands of firms. But these structures then present themselves to capitalists and other social agents as a reality conducive to further actions towards transnationalization. So it's like, I didn't know that was going to happen. And then it happens, and they're like, well, since it's happening, let's use it. Like, yeah, basically, like the super rich get to kind of plead like plausible deniability with that. Meanwhile, you got Epstein in the background, like turning all kinds of knobs and fucking cranks and shit. There is, and this is why I think people have these like large scale conspiracy theories, because, and then a lot of it ends up matching up with a lot of shit like this, because people are like, are you dumb? How do you not see that these people always win? And then to say that there's no large plot by the people with money to make that happen, are you fucking dumb? It's maybe not even that there's a large plot, it's just that they think they're clever and nobody's writing about it like this. Damn, who could have seen global warming amplifying natural disasters? I know! And who would ever want to say that that's not true? Who would ever care to say that global warming isn't an anthropogenic thing? I don't know. Maybe people causing it, making a profit off of it. Durr. Robinson is a contributor to Al Jazeera and was a journalist during Nicaragua. Jared, did you read this book already? How you know all this shit? This is right up Jared's alley. I gotta read what you put in the Discord. I'm going to, I promise. It's just it's been a crazy week. I'm in Memphis. So we're doing all kinds of shit. We're doing all kinds of shit this week. Right, Root? Oh, she got her headphones on. She ain't listening. Okay. So there is no personality commanding or directing the system, but there is a strategy or an interlacing of strategies that produces a centripetal force in terms of capitalist accumulation and definite direction for future strategy. So it's like, this is why you can't ever pin the conspiracy on anyone, because it's like, no, the world just keeps on turning type shit. Returning to Entenmann, he does list features that might make one particular managerial unit stronger or weaker, including factors such as membership size and organic behavior, but surely the key factor is what he calls discretionary wealth, or the amount of resources, capital, that each unit has as its disposal. As my husband would say, don't nobody listen to broke people. This is what he means. It's like, when you got the money to turn the wheel, you turn in the wheel, basically. The shift from commercial to an industrial and then financial capitalism is the perfect example of the direction given by discretionary wealth. Okay, commercial to industrial to financial capitalism. So that is the centripetal force. That is discretionary wealth. Yeah, because the financial capitalism wouldn't work if you didn't have money to put into it to begin with. If somebody wasn't like, hey, I'm going to take this, 15 cents and turn it into $1, that would have never came about. That was the motivating factor for that. The shift from a commercial to industrial, is the example of discretionary wealth. Entenmann does not develop this point, unfortunately. This is a shame because wealth is not just one factor amongst others. It is the factor in determining, in a very large part, the efficacy of the other factors. Entenmann includes such as public rhetoric, defined as public relations or image, and the information management. Yeah, if you have money, you can have PR. You can buy PR. To paraphrase Marx and Engels in the German ideology, those who have control over material production also have control over mental, or what is sometimes now called immaterial production. When material production becomes increasingly a matter of immaterial production, images, messages, information, data, the link between wealth and public rhetoric and social efficacy becomes even more pronounced. Thus, the idea that discretionary wealth is just one factor amongst others is incorrect and seems to be downplayed in order to permit him to prematurely pronounce the surpassing of capitalism. Okay, so I'm guessing this guy who did the rise of managerialism is trying to push us towards post-capitalist ideologies or the depoliticization ideology. I don't know if it's a leftist argument or a right of center argument. I'm not sure. I don't know the book, but it sounds like that's what he wanted to do. We're in a different world. Platform and AI culture sent Marx and Engels to the museum. Not really, Isam. There are some lasting fundamentals. Shout out to Curtis for giving someone to cite so I don't have to defend my own phrase. What was your phrase? I don't know what your phrase was. The same problem as the invisible hand. Both are subject to external control. Yes, true. Oh, it's leftist. So managerialism is a leftist conception? Is it good or bad? I don't know. What you are reading is in the past, and so therefore not valid, Isam? Like what? Okay. Running counter to Entenmann is Richard Sennett's argument. Like, wow, we've had like recurring themes throughout this year. I think we've done a good job selecting books. I think we did a good job selecting books around a theme, and we need to read Richard Sennett because Richard Sennett has come up, I believe, 3 times. Richard Sennett, Charles Taylor, and who's the other one? I don't know. I'll know it when I see it. So in the culture of new capitalism, that managers have been disabused. Here he's arguing that against the kinds of managerialism associated with top-down iron cage, as he calls them, bureaucracies. Linking this to changes in capitalism and particular changes to the relationship between capitalism and the state, Sennett speaks of an emergence of a lateral power. Made up of industrialists and increasingly investors. With regard to the explicit control of old-style bureaucratic managers, Sennett writes, investors became active judges, and the leveraged buyout meant that investors could make or break corporations while management stood by helplessly. This kind of activity, which has become increasingly prevalent with the financialization of the economy, indicates that the power of capitalists and of capital is undiminished. But idiotism is wholly dependent on the rise of managers to depoliticize interactions by subsuming each unit within the logic of the market. This subsumption is highly differentiated dependent upon the traditional relationship each unit has to the workings of capital. But managerialism facilitates this alignment due to the influence of discretionary wealth on managerial transactions. Entenmann's insights are therefore very important, but would be much more useful if instead of claiming capitalism to be over, based on spurious definitions of how capitalism works that only the most blinkered economists would now recognize, he argues that managerialism presents the logical culmination of an economic system that requires all kinds of social actors to be fully dominant. In other words, the strategies and decisions that have created the latest phase of capitalism are not only made by corporate boards, but by countless management teams that now respond to a new reality. It sounds a little bit accelerationist. This sounds a little bit like managerialism sounds accelerationist. And it doesn't sound bad. Like it depends on what the argument is. If Entenmann is arguing managerialism good, it's accelerationist. If managerialism bad, it could be pro-capitalist. Doesn't sound like it because he says this is a logical conclusion. Yeah, it sounds accelerationist. If there is a strong sense that in Entenmann that managerialism is not committed to any specific form of social organization. Managerialism is cybernetic, a system of self-reproducing units that do what's necessary to prosper by bargaining, negotiating, accommodating, challenging, and all without being determined by some pre-given external agenda. However, each one of these units exists within an environment in which discretionary wealth or capital remains a strongly determining factor in the relative strength or weakness of units. This has clearly been the case with unions, for example, whose management has taken up much greater proximity to the managers of capital in order to ensure their survival. Of course, over the last century, unions and labor organizations have made enormous gains for working men and women in terms of pay and conditions, health, safety, maternity, paternity rights, pensions. But these are also features that have stabilized capital in its shift from extraction of absolute surplus value, slavery, to relative surplus value, wage labor, welfarism. Union managers need to attend to members' needs in order to maintain strength in numbers, but they also need to pay the requirement of capital to avoid being legislated out of existence. A more cynical approach, and one I do not espouse, would be Tickwin's argument that the workers' movement has always been the vehicle for capital utopia. Yeah, we know that ain't true. Cybernetic means hypothetical or fake, LOL. I don't think that's what he means by it. I think he means cybernetic as in a system of levers and pulleys that we can manipulate things. Yeah, I would say so too. That's exactly what I was thinking, Jared, in terms of accelerationist. The fact that the system is managerialist and not atomistic, despite the ideological desire to posit the individual as the founding unit, does not mean it is not capitalism. Where welfarism carried a trace of socialist thinking with it, managerialism is the victory of capitalism without contaminating it. Welfarism carried a trace of socialist thinking. Managerialism is the victory of capitalists without contaminating it. Yeah, that's totally leftist accelerationist. You're exactly right. Managerialism is the means by which capital maximizes the influence of discretionary wealth throughout the entire social field. Now, one thing I would say is, just because he's disagreeing with it doesn't mean that a lot of these elements aren't true. It doesn't mean that this managerialism isn't actually what we're seeing manifest. It just means I think the argument for it is flawed. Hold on, let me see where we're at. Okay. What time is it? Yeah, okay. Managerialism is the means by which capital maximizes the influence of discretionary wealth throughout the entire social field, turning conflict into arbitration, dissensus into negotiation, and heterogeneity into dialogue, all of which are examples of depoliticization, as any radical ideological difference is gradually excised from managerial transactions. Yeah, so depoliticization. Basically just kind of lay into a warm liquid and accept what's happening. There's no need to fight over things, no need to quabble over resources. Yes, that's the word. Tiquin. I don't know how I'd pronounce it, but that is the word. Thank you. Sorry, I should have spelled it. But capitalism is so riven with contradictions related to wage labor, growth, sustainability, and human dignity, to name only a few, that it requires a concerted effort across all elements of social life to retain its prominence. Interesting. No, it's not K's, it's Q's. Let's see. As was shown in the previous chapter, it's not sustained as the result of naked and rational economic laws, but by potentially irrational confidence and regular irrational desire. It's a belief system maintained through the observation of doctrinal rules and the propagation of faith in every institution, whether private or public. Managerialism, then, is nothing but the maintenance or transmission of the capitalist liturgy and to all parts of society. See, now that makes more sense. Like, the way I think of managerialism is laid on top of capitalism, not erasing capitalism or replacing it. It's not a new ideology, as Eneman claims, but the fine-tuning of a hegemonic process that has emerged over many decades. Yeah, I think that's what I'm thinking of it. The success of capitalism, supported by the power of discretionary wealth, has been its ability to infiltrate all areas of life, something that various commentators refer to as biopolitics. What we need to take from Entenmann, therefore, is an analysis of capitalism in which we no longer think of power being exercised solely by capitalists, as either industrialists or investors, but by a range of social actors and institutions that broadens the scope of the strategic elements necessary for its continuation and expansion as capitalism globalizes. It is increasingly necessary to see managerialism operating in a transnational context. The problem, of course, is that the new form of managerialism has replaced the old style, top-down bureaucracies, and the globalization that has replaced the nation-state, imperial phase of capitalism are both understood to be decentralizing phenomena, and it's difficult to maintain both a notion of decentralization and a concept of hierarchical power essential for class analysis. Hierarchical power essential for class analysis. Is it difficult? No, I don't think it's difficult, because all you have to say is that different nodes have different power levels. Like, you can still distribute power amongst nodes, it's just more distributed. Biopolitics. Simone Weil criticized USSR for managerialism, I think. What does he mean by managerialism? Let me see if I can find the definition for you. This is not his. This is Willard F. Entenmann's managerialism. It's something that he argues is replacing democracy. It's a depoliticization. Let me see if he's got a... let's see if he's got a... So Let me just explain it what I think it is. So it's the idea that instead of capitalism, now we have a series of managers. There are no more individuals, that the world is just made up of a bunch of managers or handlers that facilitate the exchange of goods, basically. Yeah, and so we've got kind of managers that are at kind of the heart and the helm of all transactions, basically. I mean, bureaucratism, I guess you could say, something like that. It's like have you ever heard the term the PMC, the professional managerial class? It's like it's a world made up of middlemen. Like everyone's a middleman for someone else's transaction. Okay. I don't know if that was a good definition. That we can have a concept of radical decentralization and still conceive of power has been shown by Michael Hart and Antonio Negri. Negri is another one we've seen a couple times this year. But the persistence of discretionary wealth and its tendency to reside in specific national or regional spaces, despite arguments pertaining to fluidity of capital, disproves Hart and Negri's argument in favor of a smooth, centerless, networked power. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It would also disprove liquid modernity as well, which is not true. What I've argued is that capital must still be pushed. It must still, like, it is liquid, meaning it's easier to flow, but it must still be dammed up and allocated and dripped and like, to say that something is not liquid, to say the system isn't liquid is crazy, because you can't control the flow of it, is crazy. You can absolutely control the flow of liquids. Like, what the fuck is he on? Like, the water company can shut my fucking water off tomorrow. I can decide to add a little bit more hot water to my bath. Like, what the fuck? Capitalism is certainly networked, and managerialism offers another version of this network power, but it remains hierarchical and centering, so to speak. Yeah, I agree with that. Oh, radical decentralization. Okay, I am agreeing with him. I'm agreeing with Curtis. I'm disagreeing with Negri, I think. But I don't know Negri's argument entirely. I just know what he's saying of it. While partly supporting Hart and Negri's analysis of empire, Robinson is much closer to my own position of transnational realism regarding the financial and military dominance in the U.S., arguing that the empire of capital is headquartered in Washington. Yeah, I think we agree. Okay, I would read Transnationalist Capitalist Class, but it ain't happening today, friends. I'm hungry. I'm hungry and I need to go get me a drink because we're skating tonight. Oh no, it's like that thing Ike warned us about. Are you enjoying this book just for the commentary, Jared? It seems like it. Okay, darlings, I am going to I know who you meant. I am going to download this and put it on the fucking Substack because Substack fucking sucks.